The November fog had settled over Burnaby like a gray wool blanket, turning the streetlights into hazy orbs floating in the darkness. I watched my wife's white SUV pull out of our driveway on Willingdon Avenue, her taillights disappearing into the mist as she headed toward the Trans-Canada Highway. She'd been almost giddy that morning, humming while she packed her overnight bag, telling me her sister Colleen needed help organizing their late father's cabin up in Whistler. Something about sorting through old photographs and deciding what to keep. I turned from the living room window to find my 8-year-old son, Lucas, sitting cross-legged on the carpet. He was arranging his toy cars in a perfect line, the way he always did, his brown eyes focused entirely on the task. He hadn't looked up when his mother left. He never did. For 5 years, my son hadn't spoken a single word. The specialists had given us every diagnosis in the book: selective mutism, autism spectrum disorder, childhood trauma response. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, his current child psychiatrist at BC Children's Hospital, had gently suggested we prepare ourselves for the possibility that Lucas might never speak again. My wife had cried in the parking lot after that appointment. I'd held her, feeling like a failure. At 34, I looked older than I should have. The stress had carved lines around my eyes, and my dark hair had started going gray at the temples. My job as a forensic accountant at a downtown Vancouver firm had become my only escape, the numbers making sense when nothing else did. Dad, the word hit me like a physical blow. I spun around so fast I knocked over the lamp on the side table. It crashed to the hardwood floor, the bulb shattering, but I barely registered it. Lucas was looking directly at me, his small face pale but determined. "Lucas?" My voice came out as a whisper. "I can talk, Dad." His words were clear, deliberate, practiced. I always could. "But if Mom hears me, something bad will happen. We have to leave right now, before she comes back." The room seemed to tilt. 5 years. 5 years of therapists and medications, and watching my son sit in silence while other kids played and laughed. 5 years of Vanessa's tears and my guilt, wondering what I'd done wrong, what had broken my beautiful boy. "I don't understand," I managed to say. "What are you?" But Lucas was already standing, moving toward me with an urgency that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old. He grabbed my hand, his small fingers surprisingly strong. "Aunt Colleen isn't in Whistler. Aunt Colleen died 2 months ago. Mom told me not to tell you. She made me promise." His voice trembled, but he didn't look away. "There's a man named Marcus. He comes to our house when you're at work. They have a plan, Dad, a really bad plan, about you." My legs felt weak. I sank down to my knees to be at his level, searching his face for any sign that this was some kind of game, some fantasy he'd invented. But Lucas's eyes held nothing but fear and desperate truth. "Colleen is dead?" Lucas nodded. "Car accident on the Sea to Sky Highway. Mom got the call at night when you were working late. She told me if I ever said anything about it, or about Marcus, or about anything, she would send me away to a special hospital where kids go and never come back." My blood ran cold. "She threatened you?" "That's why I stopped talking. I was 3 when I heard them the first time. Mom and Marcus, in the kitchen. They were talking about money and about how you were in the way. I didn't understand what it meant back then, but I knew it was bad. I knew if I could talk, I might accidentally say something, so I just stopped." A 3-year-old. My son had been carrying this weight since he was 3 years old. The supposed trauma that triggered his mutism, it wasn't trauma at all. It was survival. "Where is your mother right now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "If she's not in Whistler," Lucas's face went pale. "Check your phone." I pulled my phone from my pocket. There was a text from Vanessa, sent 2 minutes ago. "Look outside." I moved to the window slowly, a terrible dread building in my chest. Through the fog, I could see Vanessa's white SUV parked across the street, engine running, headlights cutting through the mist. She was sitting in the driver's seat, and even through the fog, I could see she was watching our house. She was smiling. "She never left," Lucas whispered. "She does this sometimes. Pretends to leave, then watches to see if I'll do anything different. Usually I don't. But today I saw you looking so sad, Dad, and I couldn't keep quiet anymore." My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Whatever this was, Vanessa had been planning it carefully. Testing Lucas, testing me, waiting. We need to call the police, I said, reaching for my phone. It won't work. Marcus gave her something that blocks phone signals. She turns it on sometimes when she's home. I figured it out because my tablet stops working. I tried anyway. No signal. The landline in the kitchen was dead too. How long have you known about all of this? I asked as we moved away from the windows toward the back of the house. The stuff about Marcus? Maybe 2 years. But I've been watching and listening for longer. I remember everything, Dad. Everything they said. We reached the door to the garage. My gray Honda Accord sat in the darkness, and for one desperate moment, I thought we could just drive away. Then Lucas squeezed my hand. Check the tires. I hit the garage light. All 4 tires were flat, slashed cleanly through the sidewalls. She did it last night, Lucas said quietly. While you were sleeping. I watched from my window. The side door of the garage burst open. A man stepped through, tall and broad-shouldered, maybe early 40s, with the confident bearing of someone who'd spent time in uniform. He wore dark clothes and moved with professional precision. His gray eyes swept over us with cold assessment. "Derek Holloway," he said, and his voice was surprisingly calm, almost friendly. "I'm Marcus Webb. Your wife told me you were smart. Looks like she was right." I positioned myself between Marcus and Lucas, my heart hammering. "What do you want?" Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Originally, your life insurance. Vanessa has a policy on you worth $400,000. Accidental death pays double. We had a beautiful plan. A hiking accident up near Squamish. A fall from a cliff. Very tragic. Very clean. But you're more careful than we expected. Never go hiking alone. Never take risks. Always cautious. Your wife said you were boring, and she wasn't wrong." He shrugged, "So we moved to Plan B. Instead of killing you, we discredit you. Have you declared mentally unfit? Vanessa's been documenting your erratic behavior for 3 years now. The depression, the paranoia, the violent outbursts. I've never had violent outbursts. The records say otherwise. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo has been very helpful with that. The medications she prescribed for your anxiety. They weren't exactly what the label said. Enough to make you foggy, forgetful, easy to gaslight. Combined with Vanessa's testimony and Lucas's convenient silence, it paints a compelling picture of a man losing his grip on reality. The psychiatrist, the woman I'd trusted with my son's care, had been working against us the entire time. "The pills," I said slowly, pieces clicking together. "That's why I've felt so off. The memory lapses, the confusion. Minor side effects," Marcus said. "Nothing permanent. Just enough to make you seem unstable when the time came for the competency hearing. Once you're committed, Vanessa gets power of attorney. Full control of your assets, your savings, everything. And Lucas here goes to a very nice boarding school in Switzerland where they don't ask too many questions about why a kid doesn't talk." "You were going to send me away," Lucas said, his voice small but steady. "I heard you and Mom talking about it. You said I was a loose end." Marcus's jaw tightened. Smart kid. Too smart. I looked at my son, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Not the broken, silent child I'd believed him to be, but someone incredibly strong. Someone who'd protected himself, gathered information, waited for the right moment. He was only 8, and he'd outmaneuvered his own mother for 5 years. "Where is Vanessa now?" I asked. "Waiting for Act 3, Marcus said. "See, this whole thing tonight? It's the final performance. She comes home to find you finally snapped. Grabbed Lucas, tried to flee. She's terrified. Calls for help. When the RCMP finds you, you'll be ranting about conspiracies and plans. Your son's continued silence will be seen as fear of his unstable father, and I'll be long gone before anyone thinks to look for me. Except Lucas isn't silent anymore. Won't matter. He's 8. Vanessa will say you coached him, used him as part of your delusions. The paperwork's already done, Derek. It's over. The smart play is to come quietly." I felt Lucas's hand tighten in mine. My son had survived 5 years of psychological warfare. He'd gathered intelligence, stayed silent, waited. He was his father's son. "No," I said. "I have a better idea." Nathan Chen answered on the second ring. "Derek, it's been months. Everything okay? I need a favor," I said quietly. I was in the small bathroom off the garage. Door locked. Lucas sitting in the empty tub watching me with wide eyes. Marcus was waiting in the garage, confident he had control. What kind of favor? Your company does digital forensics, right? Financial fraud investigation? Yeah, that's the job. Why? I need you to pull everything you can find on my wife. Bank records, phone records, anything connected to her name or her sister Colleen's estate. Colleen supposedly died 2 months ago in a car accident. I need proof. A pause. Derek, that's a hell of a thing to ask. What's going on? My wife's been planning something for years. I think she was involved in Colleen's death, too. And she's been drugging me, Nathan, trying to have me declared incompetent. I don't have time to explain everything, but I need your help. Jesus. I could hear Nathan moving, keys clicking. Give me 15 minutes. Where should I send what I find? I gave him my old work email, one Vanessa didn't know about. One more thing. I need you to call Constable Jennifer Reyes at the RCMP detachment in Burnaby. Tell her Derek Holloway is requesting immediate assistance at my home address. Tell her there's credible evidence of child endangerment and fraud. Reyes? She's the one who investigated the complaint Vanessa filed against you last year, right? The one about you threatening her? Yeah, tell her I'm ready to tell her the truth. All of it. I ended the call and looked at Lucas. Did your mother ever bring Marcus here when I was home? He nodded. Twice. She said he was from the insurance company, doing a home assessment. You were in your office both times working. I watched them from the stairs. What did they do? Mom showed him something on her laptop. Then she printed papers and locked them in the safe in her closet. The big gray one she installed last year. The safe. Vanessa had said it was for important documents, tax records, Lucas's birth certificate. I'd never questioned it, never asked for the combination. I'd been too foggy to think clearly about anything. Do you know the combination? Lucas smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen on his face in 5 years. She uses my birthday, November 8th, 2017. She always thought I couldn't tell anyone because I couldn't talk. But I remembered everything. We came out of the bathroom. Marcus straightened from where he'd been leaning against my car. Make a call? He asked. Just thinking, I said. You're right. This is over. I want to say goodbye to Lucas properly. In his room. Give us 5 minutes. Marcus considered this. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside the door. We climbed the stairs with Marcus following close behind. Lucas's room was at the end of the hall, painted blue with hockey posters on the walls and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I'd spent a weekend putting up those stars, making sure the constellations were accurate. Back when I thought I was building a happy life for my family. Marcus positioned himself in the doorway, checking his watch. 5 minutes. I closed the door most of the way and knelt beside Lucas. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small key hidden under a stack of Pokemon cards. Where did you get that? I whispered. Mom hides a spare key in her jewelry box in case she forgets the combination. I found it 2 years ago. Her closet was across the hall. No way to get there without Marcus seeing. Then I heard it. Sirens. Distant at first, but growing closer. Marcus heard them too. His relaxed posture vanished. That's not Vanessa, he said. She wasn't supposed to call them yet. No, I said, opening Lucas's door fully and facing him. That's Constable Reyes, responding to a report of child endangerment and financial fraud. My friend Nathan is very efficient when he needs to be. How long do you think it takes to trace a signal jammer, Marcus? The RCMP takes that kind of thing seriously. Marcus's hand moved toward his jacket. You can run, I said, stepping forward, putting Lucas behind me. Try to get out before they arrive. Or you can stay and hope Vanessa's story holds up under investigation. Your choice. His gray eyes flickered between me, Lucas, and the stairs. The sirens were louder now, maybe 2 blocks away. He ran. I heard him pound down the stairs, heard the garage door crash open, heard an engine roar to life somewhere behind our house. Tires squealed. Then silence, except for the approaching sirens. Dad, Lucas said quietly, we need to get what's in the safe before Mom gets here. Together, we crossed the hall to Vanessa's closet. The safe was mounted in the back corner, hidden behind her expensive winter coats. Lucas handed me the key. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a thick folder. I pulled it out as red and blue lights began to flash through the bedroom windows. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted. I opened the folder. The first page was a life insurance policy. My name as the insured. $400,000, with an accidental death rider that doubled the payout. Beneficiary, Vanessa Chen Holloway. The second page was a psychiatric evaluation of me, written by Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, dated 6 months before I'd ever met her. It outlined exactly how to systematically undermine my mental state while maintaining deniability. Recommended medications, suggested behaviors for Vanessa to document, a timeline for the competency hearing. The third page was a coroner's report template, already filled out except for the date. Cause of death, accidental overdose of prescription medication. My name was printed at the top. There's more, Lucas said. Under the liner at the bottom. I pulled out the rest. Photographs, dozens of them. Marcus and Vanessa together, going back 4 years. In restaurants, in hotels, in our house. One showed them standing over a hospital bed where an elderly woman lay unconscious. I recognized her from the family photos, Vanessa's mother, who had supposedly died of natural causes 2 years ago. The last photograph was different. A dark highway at night, rain on the windshield, taillights in the distance, and in the bottom corner, a timestamp. September 15th of this year, the night Colleen supposedly died on the sea-to-sky highway. The doorbell rang. I gathered the folder and took Lucas's hand. We descended the stairs together. Through the front window, I could see 3 RCMP vehicles in the driveway, their lights painting the fog red and blue. Constable Jennifer Reyes stood on the porch. She was younger than I remembered, from our last encounter, when she'd come to investigate Vanessa's complaint that I'd threatened her. She'd been professionally skeptical then. Now her face was carefully neutral. Mr. Holloway, we received a call that you might be in danger. Is everything all right? Behind her, I watched Vanessa's white SUV pull up to the curb. She stepped out, her face a perfect mask of fear and concern. She was good. She'd been good at this for a very long time. Constable, I said, loud enough for Vanessa to hear. I'd like to report a conspiracy involving fraud, child endangerment, and possibly 2 murders, and I have evidence. Vanessa's mask slipped. Just for a second. But I saw it. The interview room at the Burnaby RCMP detachment smelled like weak coffee and floor cleaner. I sat across from Constable Reyes. The folder's contents spread across the metal table. Lucas was in another room with a social worker, giving his own statement. I'd insisted that his voice be heard. 5 years of silence gave his words weight. This is substantial, Reyes said slowly. But you understand my position, Mr. Holloway. A year ago, I investigated your wife's complaint that you threatened her. The evidence suggested you were having mental health issues. I recommended counseling. That was the plan, I said. Build a case against me over years. Make me look unstable. And I don't blame you for believing her. Vanessa made sure everything looked convincing. Your wife is currently in another interview room claiming you've been having a psychotic episode, that you've brainwashed your son into supporting your delusions. She has documentation from Dr. Okonkwo supporting her claims. Check Dr. Okonkwo's finances. My friend Nathan Chen has already found suspicious payments to her from an offshore account registered to Marcus Webb, and check the medication she prescribed me. I think you'll find it contained more than just anti-anxiety pills. Reyes studied me for a long moment. Then she looked down at the folder again. This psychiatric evaluation, she said, pointing to the document, dated before I'd ever met Dr. Okonkwo. This suggests premeditation going back years. It was all planned. Every detail, including my wife's mother's death and her sister Colleen's death. Both of them had money. Both of them died conveniently. A knock at the door. A young officer stepped in and whispered something to Reyes. Her expression shifted. Marcus Webb was apprehended trying to cross into Washington State at the Peace Arch Crossing, she said. He had $60,000 in cash and 2 forged Canadian passports in his vehicle. One for himself, one for a woman named Vanessa Holloway. He's asking for a lawyer, but he's in custody. Something loosened in my chest. And the signal jammer? Found in your garage. That's a federal offense on its own. Reyes leaned back. Mr. Holloway, I'm going to be honest with you. Your son's statement is remarkably detailed. He's describing events, conversations, dates, things an 8-year-old shouldn't be able to remember so clearly. Either he's telling the truth, or someone coached him extensively. He remembers everything, I said. He's been watching and listening for 5 years, Constable. He stopped talking to protect himself, because he knew what would happen if his mother found out he'd heard things he wasn't supposed to hear. He's the bravest person I know. The custody hearing, 3 days later, was swift. Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, that Lucas had been manipulated, that the evidence was fabricated. But the facts were overwhelming. The bank records, the phone logs, the photographs. Dr. Okonkwo's confession. She'd taken a deal to testify against Vanessa and Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. And then there was Lucas. He sat in the witness chair, small but unshakable, and told his story in clear, precise detail. Every conversation he'd overheard, every time he'd seen Marcus in our house, every night he'd lain awake, afraid to speak, afraid of what his mother might do. The judge's ruling was immediate, full custody to me. Vanessa was to have no contact with Lucas pending her criminal trial. As we left the courthouse, Lucas held my hand and looked up at me. "Dad, can we get a dog now? Despite everything, despite the horror of the past week." I laughed. "Yeah, buddy, we can get a dog. I want to name him Maple, because we're Canadian, and it's a good name. That's a much better name than I would have come up with." The trial lasted 4 weeks. The Crown prosecutor built an airtight case. The life insurance fraud, the psychiatric manipulation, the signal jammer, the forged documents. And then there was Colleen. Nathan's digital forensics team had found records of Vanessa's car on the Sea to Sky highway that night, following Colleen's vehicle. They'd found text messages between Vanessa and Marcus discussing how to make it look like an accident. They'd found a witness, a truck driver who remembered seeing 2 cars, one following dangerously close behind the other, just before Colleen's vehicle went through the guardrail. Her mother's death was reopened too. The natural causes looked very different when investigators discovered the cocktail of medications that had been added to her evening tea over several months. On the final day of the trial, as the jury filed back in after only 3 hours of deliberation, Vanessa turned and looked at me from the defendant's table. Her eyes held no remorse, no shame, just cold fury that her careful plans had fallen apart. The 4 persons stood. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder of Colleen Chen, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of second-degree murder of Margaret Chen, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Marcus received the same. Dr. Okonkwo lost her medical license and received 8 years for her role in the scheme. Outside the courthouse, as the autumn wind scattered orange leaves across the steps, Lucas squeezed my hand. "It's over," he said. "Right, Dad? It's really over?" "Yeah, buddy. It's really over." 2 years later, I stood in the living room of our new house in North Vancouver, watching Lucas practice piano in the corner. He'd taken to it immediately after we moved, filling the house with music that had been silent for so long. Maple, our golden retriever, lay at his feet, tail thumping against the hardwood with every chord. My phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. Got another one. Woman in Calgary. Husband's been documenting her mental instability for 2 years. Sound familiar? It did sound familiar. Too familiar. After Vanessa's conviction, after the media coverage died down, I'd started getting messages. First one, then 5, then dozens. People who recognized their own situations in my story. Spouses being gaslit, parents being isolated from their children, victims of psychological abuse so subtle and systematic that no one believed them. I'd helped 3 families so far, connected them with lawyers, investigators, therapists who understood what they were going through. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. "Dad?" Lucas called from the piano bench. "Someone's here." I opened the front door to find a woman in her 40s. Dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "Mr. Holloway? I'm Sandra Okafor. I read about your case. I think..." She paused, swallowing hard. "I think my husband is doing to me what your wife did to you. No one believes me, but I recorded this." She held out her phone, and I heard a man's voice, calm and confident, explaining to someone how easy it was to make a spouse look crazy when you controlled the narrative. "Come in," I said. "Tell me everything." That night, after Sandra left with a plan and the names of people who could help her, I tucked Lucas into bed. At 10 years old, he was getting too big for tucking in, but neither of us was ready to give up the ritual. You're going to help her, right? Lucas asked. The woman who was here? I'm going to try. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom used to say I was weak because I couldn't talk. But I wasn't weak, was I? I was just waiting. You were the strongest person in that house, I said. You kept yourself safe. You remembered everything. And when the time was right, you saved both of us. We saved each other, Lucas corrected. He reached out and touched my hand. Dad, I'm glad I can talk now. But I think I learned something important when I was quiet. I learned how to listen, really listen, and how to watch, and how to wait until I knew what to do. Those are important skills, buddy. Maybe that's why this happened. So I could learn those things, so we could help other people later. I didn't believe in fate or cosmic plans, but looking at my son, at the person he'd become, I understood what he meant. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the best things we can do for others. Maybe, I said. Get some sleep, okay? You've got school tomorrow. And piano practice. Mrs. Yamamoto says I'm ready for the intermediate exam. Then you'll pass it. You're good at everything you put your mind to. Lucas smiled, and it wasn't the guarded, careful smile of a child who'd spent 5 years hiding. It was open, free, unafraid. Night, Dad? Good night, buddy. Maple followed me out of Lucas's room, and I paused at the door to look back at my son. He was already drifting off to sleep, safe and warm, his voice restored, his future wide open. 5 years of silence. 3 years of planning by people who were supposed to love us. Months of recovery and healing and learning to trust again. And now this, a new house, a new life, a son who played piano and spoke freely and wanted to help people. A mission that gave meaning to everything we'd suffered. Vanessa had wanted to destroy us. Instead, she'd given us purpose. I went to my home office and opened Nathan's message again. The woman in Calgary. Another family in crisis. Another chance to make sure what happened to Lucas and me didn't happen to someone else. I started typing my response. Send me everything you have. I'll make some calls in the morning. Outside, the November fog rolled in from the harbor, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. The fog had hidden Vanessa's car that night, hidden her watching our house, hidden her plans, but it had also hidden Lucas and me, as we found the truth. Some things become clearer in the fog. You just have to know how to look. I thought about what Lucas had said, about being strong even when the world thought he was weak, about waiting, about listening. There are people in your life right now who need you to listen, really listen. Not to respond, not to fix, not to judge, just to hear them. There are children watching everything, understanding more than we think they do, carrying weights we can't imagine. There are victims who've been told so many times that they're crazy, that they're imagining things, that no one will believe them, that they've started to believe it themselves. If you recognize yourself in this story, or if you recognize someone you love, please know this. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And your silence, whatever form it takes, can become your greatest strength when you're ready to break it. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Find people who will believe you. And remember that survival is its own form of courage. Lucas taught me that. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you in the next one.